With college great and NBA legend Bill Walton. Bill, thanks for coming on The Average Guys.
D, give it up, big man. Right. It's great to be here in Duluth. I've never been to Duluth. I've never even been to Hibbing, where maybe my best friend Kevin McHale lives. And unfortunately, Kevin's going to have to spend a lot of time up there right now. Far too much for any of us in the NBA. A terrible loss for the T-Wolves. Terrible loss for Kevin McHale. We're all so sad, devastated, really.
Well, what is your take? We don't feel comfortable asking the T-Wolves those kind of questions. We're average guys, but what's your whole take on what happened with the T-Wolves?
They broke the rules. The discipline had to come down. It was something that I think was necessary, and it was tough because it had to happen to such a good, close personal friend of mine and Kevin McHale, a man who has been absolutely so clean, pristine during the course of his entire career, and now to have this come down and put a little bit of a pockmark right on Kevin McHale's reputation, and it's sad, but hey, you have an organization, you have rules, you got guys at the top who have to enforce those rules, so something that had to be done.
So was Commissioner Stern's ruling a fair ruling?
I've always known Commissioner Stern to be a fair and honest man, and Commissioner Stern has made this league what it is today, and I have no problems with the things he does. He's not a vindictive person. He is not an egomaniac. This is a very fair, reasonable man, intelligent beyond all comprehension, and here's a guy who loves basketball, loves the people who make the NBA what it is, and Kevin McHale is certainly one of those very special guys. I know it had to pain Commissioner Stern very much because Kevin McHale, one of the top 50 players of all time, a Hall of Famer, a legend in the Boston Celtics, and one of the real foundations and building blocks of what the NBA is all about today.
Well, let's just quickly build up to your friendship with Mr. McHale.
I remember the time we were here in Minnesota. We were here with the Grateful Dead and Bob Dylan. They were playing a big concert over at the Dome. I don't know what they call the Dome, but we were sitting around in between the sets, and it was Jerry Garcia, Kevin McHale, Bob Dylan, and I. We were sitting there, and Kevin got up to go get something to drink. I'm sure it was ice water, and he said, and Dylan leaned in and he said, "Bill, that Kevin McHale, he seems like a really nice and sharp guy. Why does he keep going back to Hibbing, Minnesota?" And I said, "I don't know, Bob. You have to ask him." And but Kevin McHale and Bob Dylan, two of our favorites from this part of the world.
Well, Bob Dylan was born in Duluth.
Oh no, we know that.
Oh well, okay. Well, I'm sure you've been around the block.
We know a lot about Bob Dylan. He is our man, and it's funny because I'm from San Diego, California, and I've never been to Hibbing, but two of my favorite people from that part of the world, Kevin McHale and Bob Dylan, so similar, the imagination, the creativity, the vividness of their personalities, and I'm a lucky guy to know them both.
Well, let's just talk about I still want to work my way up to McHale. What about your days?
He was the second best low post player that I ever played against, behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kevin McHale could do anything on the basketball court. He had those long arms where he could scratch his shins without bending over. He had that Frankenstein neck with the bolts coming out of it. In fact, when they had to operate on Kevin's foot and put a screw in there to pin the bone back together, the rumor is that they just took one of the bolts out of his neck and put it right into his foot.
Well, you began your college career at UCLA, and I would be remiss on The Average Guys if I didn't ask about John Wooden. What kind of man was he for the viewers that we all see him on TV in little snippets? But if you could just talk about John Wooden and your UCLA glory days for just a little bit.
Johnny D, Coach Wooden was so special, so spectacular. A man who's 90 years old right now, so full of joy, happiness, exuberance. He treats life and basketball the same. To him, it's all just a big, joyous celebration. And he has the attitude without any sense of bitterness, no ounce of envy or jealousy in his life whatsoever. Every day he thinks about, hey, we get to go play basketball now. Let's get going. Just so positive, so upbeat. I'm really lucky, privileged, and proud to have played for him.
So now you got Coach Lavin.
That's Jim Peterson there.
That's former golfer, former NBA.
Star there.
No, you took Jim Peterson now. Is that the former golfer?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And he played on Houston.
Peterson.
Right.
Houston Rockets. Oh, man, I've got so many scars. That guy's a tough player. Oh, man, he used to just manhandle me around out there on the court.
But now your first championship, you got one with Celtics in '86, or?
Right, I got the Celtics in '86 when I was Larry Bird's valet.
The Trailblazers and
Trailblazers in '77 before any of you guys were born.
I remember watching that series on CBS, taking on the Sixers.
Before they had television, this was in the days of black and white still photography and the Morse code over the wires, the telegraph. So it's
they were tape delayed at times.
It's come a long way, the NBA, and we're so very proud to still be a part of it.
So what was it like, though, in '77 when you did? You took on the Sixers. Now, you came into the NBA in what year? Was it 75?
I started in the NBA in 1974. I was the #1 draft pick for the Portland Trailblazers after being at UCLA for 3 years. And at that time, I became the highest paid player in the history of team sports. The history of team sports. And I made less in those years than Derek Coleman makes every time he refuses to go into a game today. So that's how much the game has changed.
Derek Coleman. Now, that's a whole different story there. Then from...
Do you have enough tape in your camera to get into that one?
Well, you know, DC, that's right. But let's just talk about, then you go from Portland down to San Diego, and now...
Clippers, and it was a wonderful experience. It didn't work out for me. It was an opportunity for me to go home, and I was injured the whole time, and it was a huge disappointment because professional basketball has failed in San Diego because of my inability to play, and that will forever gnaw at me
because I remember reading that sports section and seeing Walton, you know, it was stress fractures in your feet.
Yeah, I had the worst career in the history of sports. I was injured so much, the most injured athlete in the history of all sports, and I had 30 operations, an endless series of stress fractures. It would break from playing too much, and then I'd stop, and then I'd start, and it would get better, and I'd start again. It would just break right again. I just could never get it right, and eventually they had to fuse one of my ankles, and so it was a devastating day. That was over 10 years ago now, but I haven't had a surgery since then, so I'm very, very fortunate. I'm the luckiest and happiest guy alive.
Then to complete the Bill Walton biography, you go from the Clippers
at the bottom to the Boston Celtics, and I got traded to a championship team, and it brought all the joy and happiness back into my life because here were the world champion Boston Celtics allowing me to be on their team, and guys like Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, Dennis Johnson, Robert Parrish, Jerry Seasting, who's now here with the T-Wolves, Scott Wedman, Greg Kite, Rick Carlisle, legendary guys, and just we had so much fun. We had a phenomenal coach in Casey Jones. We have remained best of friends, and it was a really special time and a unique team. And I've been lucky, Johnny D, to be part of 3 of the greatest teams in the history of basketball: UCLA, the Portland Trailblazers, and the Boston Celtics. And now to be here with you on this show, I don't think I've ever had a great moment in my life.
Well, you know, our motto is it's cool to be average, and you're a little bit above average.
I'm tall, but there's a lot of guys who are taller, and mostly I'm just referred to as that goofy, nerdy-looking guy with the big nose and what used to be red hair. And I guess what used to be hair, and now it's all falling out there. Well, I get old. I'm 48 years old now, Johnny D.
48, how time flies. But let's talk just briefly before we wrap it up here. Music. Favorite rock album, favorite musical album of all time?
I'm a Deadhead, and I grew up in California, and have been to over 600 Grateful Dead shows. In fact, I'll be with them again this New Year's Eve, where we spent so many New Year's Eves. Love Bob Dylan. This week we've celebrated the 20th anniversary of the passing of John Lennon, who was just a hero to all of us. And
you ever meet Lennon?
Never did meet John. Neil Young we liked very much, Mick Jagger and the Stones, but I'm a rock and roller. I like it fast, loud, long, and just get it going, start dancing, turn the lights down, and let's have a great time.
What about Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon? We have that on our table on every show.
I know a little bit about them, but like I said, I'm a Deadhead, and I love Bob Dylan and Neil Young, John Lennon, Mick Jagger. Those are the guys I like.
So through it all, Mr. Walton, you are an average guy.
below average.
That's better yet, because sometimes I got to question myself, too. But anyways, Bill Walton, thank you very, very much.
All right, everybody up in Duluth there. I'm trying to get there real soon.
All right, and that's Bill Walton. And thanks again, Bill, for coming on The Average Guys. Here we are.